What's up, everybody? It's your host, Dexter Henry of the NBA Exchange, coming to you on a Wednesday. And man, it has been a wacky Wednesday in the NBA. But you know what we do on Wednesdays? We don't talk about hot takes, even though we have a lot of hot news to get to. We talk with my man, Jarod Hector. You see him on True Hoop. You also see him as the host of the 7 Footers podcast. Jarod, Wacky Wednesday. How's your Wacky Wednesday going? Tell me.
Man, I get up in the morning and I'm like, all right, I was covering that excellent Nets game last night. I saw a historic performance on one of the greatest players of all time. Then the next thing I know, Wednesday morning, oh man, we got coaches getting fired. We got news leaking about teams and GMs getting fired. All kinds of crazy stuff happening. Players injured. But you know what we do here, Dex? We here for nuance, man. So while we have hot stories, as you said, no hot takes here, people. Nuance.
There you go. You can talk about the hot stories, but you can have some nuance behind it. It is okay, folks. This can be done. Now, you talked about how last night you were at the Barclays Center covering the Nets Game 5 versus the Milwaukee Bucks. Obviously a pivotal game. A lot was going on Tuesday, the day before. Didn't know if James Harden was going to play. Found out a few hours before that he would. And I actually, at the last minute, got some tickets to be in the building for this contest. And boy, what a game it was. Didn't feel like that it was going to be that way in the first half, but this was an amazing contest in which we saw a historic 49-point triple-double from Jarod's boy, Kevin Durant, killing it all over the court. I mean, I tweeted this, legendary performance. There is no way about this. There's a lot of things you'll remember about this performance. KD hitting the shot, looking up to the sky. Steve Nash giving him a hug as he's coming off the court because he realized that he lifted the wounded Nets. Mm-hmm. Watching this, Jarod, I got to think you were as amazed as I was behind the shooting performance, the rebounds, the assists that KD totaled. Where do you rank this legendary performance and just how great was it? It doesn't have to have a ranking on it, but how great do you think this was for KD and the Nets?
This is an all-time Nets performance in the history of the Nets franchise, for sure, given the importance of the game. It's one of KD's greatest games ever. I don't know if it's his greatest. I mean, 2017 in the finals, 2018 in the finals, Game 3 and Game 4, I believe, respectively, were some of his great games. 2011, closing out his first playoff series. The infamous Mavericks series after the Memphis series after the Mr. Unreliable headlines, where he went 36-33 in Game 6 and in Game 7. I think what we're seeing, Dexter, is something that I have said for a long time. And I think, in this age we live in of hot takes and Twitter, and people don't really have memories to recognize what's going on. And I say that because basketball existed before 2015. The rise of the Golden State Warriors. And I feel like people don't remember that time. Kevin Durant is an all-time great player. Those years in Oklahoma City were excellent. All everybody wants to point to is blowing a 3-1 lead to the Golden State Warriors. Like, yes, that was a marker. But prior to that, that team got to the finals led by Kevin Durant. A 23-year-old Kevin Durant against a prime LeBron James in that finals averaged 30 points a game on 50% shooting. He wasn't the reason they lost that finals. Right. So I think in every year that he's been healthy while with Oklahoma City, they got to at least the conference finals. Right. The years that they didn't, he was either injured and missed the season or Russ was injured and missed the playoffs. Right. Like so the idea that this isn't someone who can do this is laughable. And I said this to someone the other day, my first basketball memory was 1985 NBA Finals, Lakers Celtics. So I've seen a lot of great basketball players in my time watching the NBA. I would be hard-pressed to find 5 people that are better at playing basketball than Kevin Durant. Let me say that again and be very slow and clear. Since 1985, when I remember watching NBA basketball, the NBA Finals, I would be hard-pressed to find 5 basketball players who are better than Kevin Durant.
That is quite a statement, and I think some people will be mad if I mention some other people that they thought might be better than Kevin Durant that may not like what you had to say. But look, undoubtedly a great performance, 114-108 victory for the Nets in Game 5. They now have a 3-2 lead in the series. But let's look at the flip side to Milwaukee. A lot of controversy, I won't say controversy, but criticism surrounding Giannis Antetokounmpo following this game. He didn't guard Kevin Durant. Some people had critiques about that. Other critiques about his game and not being able to deliver here. Now, I think there's some measure we look at this and say, KD showed you what a max player should do in a big-time game. He stepped up, and I joked about this on Twitter. The Bucks front office was looking at his performance and said, oh, that's what a max player should give us. That Giannis didn't do it. Now, Giannis still had 34 points, 12 rebounds in this contest, but still a lot of criticism around him in his game following Game 5, and the Bucks offense did not look good down the stretch, as you know, Jarod. Do you think the criticism surrounding Giannis is fair right now? Do you think it's fair to criticize him after this Game 5 performance, or does Giannis still have much more to grow in his game?
I think it's fair to criticize Giannis. I think the way in which he's being criticized is incorrect, as is most things on NBA basketball, like that's on the internet. Because to be frank, Dexter, people don't know what they're watching when they watch NBA basketball. They think it's 5 mini games of one-on-one, and it's not. Like, that is a component of an overall basketball game, but it's not 5 guys going one-on-one. Like, and I understand for the theater and the way human beings in our brains work. We like the hero narrative, and this player did X and XYZ happened, right? It goes back to everything we see in society. Comic books. What happens? Metropolis or the city's under siege. Superman comes and saves the day, right? One person. That's not how sport works. Like, you win as a team and you lose as a team. And the idea that Giannis should have been guarding KD the whole time, like, well, first of all, in 2021 NBA basketball, if you think defense is about one-on-one still, I don't know what you're watching. Yes, you need to make sure you're doing what is required of you in your individual matchup. But basketball now, given the way offense is played, is about team. And what you can say is maybe Milwaukee needs to look at their team scheme and do something differently, right? Because clearly, maybe the certain drop coverages and different things that they're doing don't work against this particular squad, right? Your ability to be flexible and to change and adjust, but that isn't on Giannis, that's on his coach. Now, where you can get into Giannis having issues is skill development. In 2021 and continually going forward, the NBA is not just a game of height and athleticism. That's important, but you gotta have skill. Everybody is skilled now. And what you're seeing, as we know, regular season basketball, playoff basketball, 2 completely different things. I mean, they're only the same in the sense that you put a round ball in a round net. That's really it. Everything else is vastly different. And in the playoffs, your lack of skill and whatever you are weak at in your game gets fully exposed. And that's what we're seeing for Giannis. Over the past 2 years, 2-time MVP and Defensive Player of the Year, he has not improved skill-wise. And what happens is, late in games, when teams like to go to their pet plays or their superstar, Giannis has a fundamental issue. One, he's not an offensive initiator. He's a finisher, right? Because he cannot shoot. So you can drop and sag off of him and say, if you beat us hitting threes, we'll take that. But because we know we don't have confidence you can make that shot. He doesn't have confidence he can make that shot because he doesn't do it. Now, the other problem is he can't hit free throws. So his number one skill set, which is attacking the rim and putting tremendous pressure on it, if he gets fouled, he's going to make 1 out of 2. And when in those precious possessions, when the playoff moments, when every possession matters and you have to maximize points, 1 out of 2 on the line, not good. And I mean, and it's not fair to compare him to Kevin Durant, but you saw it last night. When the Bucks had to foul and get Kevin on the line, you knew he was making those free throws, right? Yep. And that's right. Those are 2 guaranteed points versus maybe we'll get 1. And that's a problem, right? In a late game where every point is so crucial, that matters.
It's going to matter. And if you're a max player, it's going to matter whether you're able to deliver or not. But when we talk about, that was Tuesday night, we talked about the game there, Game 5. We're talking about Wednesday. News changed real quick. A lot of news around things in the league. And one of the first news that people saw this morning surrounded Phoenix Suns point guard Chris Paul. Chris Paul will be out indefinitely. Yes, indefinitely, folks. He is in the COVID health and safety protocols by the league. Should be noted that Chris Paul was vaccinated, did get the Pfizer vaccine back in February, but now who knows when he can return. It could be next week when the Western Conference Finals start. Don't know at all. How big of a blow do you think this is? I mean, obviously for the Suns, this is the guy who led, was great in the Game 4 sweep over the Nuggets, 37 points. Now they don't know when their leader will be back. How huge of a blow is this for the Phoenix Suns?
Well, timing-wise, in a way, the fact that they swept the Nuggets was kind of big because they got a lot of off days in between. And at a minimum, the Clippers Jazz series has got to go 6, right? Because it's 2-2. So at a minimum, that's going another few days. So that's going to help. The other advantage that the Suns have here is that, according to the NBA rules, if you are in fact have been vaccinated and you still register with a positive test, which is what happened to CP3, your return to the team, the time frame, is less than it would be had you not been vaccinated. So that's one positive sign for Phoenix. Really, it's just bad timing. And, and I do know this, a lot of teams around the league who are in the playoffs right now, their fear is that, their finals chances being disrupted by something like this, like a positive COVID test. And that's and the Suns are lucky that Chris is vaccinated. What if it's a team with a player who isn't vaccinated? Who knows when you're coming back, if at all. So listen, we know the vaccination is important. Get it. I'm vaccinated. I know you are. I know many other people are. You can still get it while you have the vaccine. While you have the vaccine. So it's very important that you still follow all the protocols that you need, even though things are opening up all over the country.
Yeah, I think this is very important for people to look at, that even in this world where we've had fans returning to arenas, I've been to 2 NBA playoff games this month alone in vaccinated sections, that we are still living in a COVID world. We are still in a pandemic, and this still affects sports. So for players who haven't protected their bodies in the best way that they can, this can disrupt your postseason run. And this is why it's absolutely important to do this. And I'm sure Chris Paul is going to reiterate that message as president of the Players Association. Now, Chris Paul, not the only person that will be out in terms of, you could say injury or not being able to be on the court. Kawhi Leonard, we saw him at the end of Game 4 tweak his knee. A lot of people didn't know what it was. He looked okay after that. Kawhi was then ruled out for Game 5, and now it's been said that he will be out for the rest of the series versus the Utah Jazz with now what is being called an ACL injury. Tough blow, right, Jarod?
Man, this is really bad for the Clippers. And this is the same knee, the same leg that Kawhi has quad issues with that hampered him all the way back in the San Antonio days, and is a huge subject of his load management. It's just a shame, man. And injuries really are the story of this NBA postseason, unfortunately. The number of all-stars that have missed time. You mentioned earlier, Harden not being 100%, basically played on one leg yesterday. Kyrie Irving out. Anthony Davis missed time in the first round. Joel Embiid's playing on a torn meniscus. I mean, it's just the injuries just keep mounting and mounting. And Steve Nash has something interesting today. He wasn't sure how much of it he felt was related to the shortened offseason, though I disagree with Steve there. The shortened offseason played a huge part in it, especially if you're one of those teams that played late. The other part is, which I do agree with Steve, is that the condensed schedule was a big part of this. They crammed 72 games into 20 weeks. That's an average of 4+ games a week. That's a lot of basketball. And Dexter, you know this. I've talked to a number of medical professionals and performance people and training specialists who all, to a man and woman, say the most load an NBA player should take on their body in any 7-day period is 2. And we know that they do way more than that. And that's why we're seeing a lot of these injuries.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's tough. We just talked about Chris Paul, Kawhi. Kawhi not fully ruled out indefinitely. Don't know. There's no timetable for his return right now, so we don't know. But it's pretty likely that he will miss the rest of at least the series.
Mike Conley for the Jazz also out with a hamstring.
Yep, also out. We see what's happening in the East with Joel Embiid and how he played in the last game. We'll see what he is able to do and how much he's able to give tonight. But injury is definitely something to keep your eye on as we move forward in this NBA playoffs. Now, on to the front office and coaching side of things as part of this Wacky Wednesday. This is something Jarod and I had planned to talk about before on this particular episode of the show. We were going to talk about the Mavericks front office. Story comes out in The Athletic earlier this week about the Mavericks front office situation and some discord around it and how players, including Luka Doncic, may not be happy with a particular person around the organization. Then news came out right before we decided to record this show that GM Donnie Nelson of the Mavericks has decided to leave. He is out and has decided to part ways. Jarod, with everything that's been reported this week around the Mavericks, this doesn't come as a major shock to you, correct?
Not at all. I mean, the Athletic story, which is well done by Sam Amick, Tim Cato, I believe, were the two main guys on that beat. Look, we knew once the story came out, based on what was said, who was having an issue, right? We knew it was Luka Doncic's camp, so his agent, right, being one of the sources, The other source, of course, being Donnie Nelson, because the issue at hand is who has the largest voice within the Mavericks organization after owner Mark Cuban. And it is not Donnie Walsh, who, until today, was the GM. It was, in fact, Bob Bulgaris, who's, I think his title is like Director of Analytics or something of that nature. I'm not 100% sure. Either way, he is the person who is the second in command, so to speak, within the Dallas Mavericks organization. And he's making roster decisions. He's making lineup decisions. His influence is being wielded very heavily. And Donnie Nelson, the GM, felt like, well, if he's doing that, what am I here for, right? Like, and Luka obviously, has some issues with him, and he obviously was, what we can take from that is that perhaps Bob and Luka's agent had a not great conversation about something at one time. I know in the stories mentioned that Bob left the arena early during a Mavericks game. That's nice color, and that's probably true. But I'm sure it goes a little bit deeper than that. And this is sort of the nature of how the NBA works, and a lot more of this back office politics and interpersonal relationships go into what happens and how people feel about things. And regardless, at the end of the day, with what we're seeing, this is still a business about people. And clearly, there are Donnie Nelson was someone in the Mavericks organization who felt like Bob Bulgaris and his growing influence was not something he wanted to sit around and be a part of.
I wonder how much going forward is going to cause front offices and organizations to think about how they deal with people when people don't want to necessarily be around certain things or be undermined. You have to think about it when you're running an organization, whether it's players, whether it's coaches, whether it's front office staff. This is going to be something interesting to see how other teams react to seeing the GM of Donnie Walsh's status and tenure that he had with the team now walking away and saying, I don't want to deal with this. It's something to keep an eye on, and we will definitely delve into more of that later. But also, Donnie Walsh, not the only person out and leaving. Stan Van Gundy in New Orleans, out with the Pelicans after just 1 year on the job. Jarod, this one came as a bit of a surprise to me, although it seemed he hadn't had much of this impact that he would have wanted to with the team this year, particularly defensively, that we may have thought we would have seen. What do you make of this, and where do the Pelicans head from here, looking for a new coach?
It wasn't that much of a shock to me, because watching Pelicans games in year one, like, I get it. Like, NBA coaches are always frustrated and exacerbated on the sideline, and Stan is one of those who's a little bit more than most. He's a little bit more extroverted with the way he feels about things. I'm like, bro, this is year one, and you're already this frustrated with this team. That told me, and I had no firsthand knowledge of this. I didn't talk to anybody close to New Orleans. But I was like, it doesn't seem like you and these players are jiving for whatever reason. And if that's how it is already, and again, we're talking about season one, we ain't long for this. And look, that's what we're seeing right now, and it's a shame, because this is now another impediment on a team that everybody thought, like, right, well, this team can make a legit run at the playoffs. And I mean, I know I was someone when Zion got drafted, because he came in the same draft class as John Morant. I was like, wow, I think the Grizzlies and the Pelicans, that's the future of the Western Conference, right? I'm like, the Pelicans might be a long step away from that, right? The Grizzlies at least made the playoffs this year. It's just disappointing. And, for someone like Zion, who is obviously the franchise cornerstone they want to build around, this will be his third coach already?
Yeah. Already?
That can't be good for development.
No, can't be. Already a third coach for him. Now they'll be looking for another one this offseason. And another team will be looking for another coach, and that's in the nation's capital of Washington, D.C. Scott Brooks out with the Wizards after they failed to come to an agreement on terms of a contract. Now, Scott Brooks, Jarod, appeared like he would come back. Got the Wizards in a good position, got them in the play-in tournament and into the playoffs. You thought he might come back after they had such a rough start, which a lot of it was due to injuries there. But now they're going to have to find a new coach, especially around Bradley Beal. Scott Brooks was a guy who coached Russell Westbrook, so there's a relationship there. Them two sort of the same thing. It's really the question of where do the Wizards go from here? But I think more of their questions might actually start with what they do with Bradley Beal as opposed to the coach, correct?
Well, that's the question, right? I mean, especially, the Wizards, as you mentioned, had that sort of run at the end of the season to get into that 8 seed and into the playoffs. But what happens to Bradley? What happens to Russ? I mean, Scott Brooks is, I guess in many ways the Russell Westbrook whisperer, right? His long tenured coach in Oklahoma City, and then Russ found his way to Washington and played with him again this season. What do the Wizards do there? Bradley Beal, it's another one. Like, is he willing for a new coach and culture reset in Washington? How many coaches has he had? Jeez, like it's the Wizards are in a precarious situation because you kind of got a backcourt that's pretty good, right? I mean, we know what Bradley is. Russ is getting older, but still had a very good season towards the end. You got these young players, Abdia, Thomas Bryant, Rui Hachimura, right? Like, what are you doing with those guys? The timelines don't seem to be all meshed and adding up here. GM Tommy Shepard has got quite a job on his hands to figure out what are we doing here.
He absolutely does. As you said, that's all. We just told you all the stuff that happened on Wednesday. A wacky Wednesday, indeed, in the NBA. Well, there's some games tonight. We actually have some basketball to talk about, folks. 2 Game 5s tonight. First, we'll have the Hawks back in Philadelphia for Game 5 against the Sixers, and also the Clippers back in Salt Lake City to take on the Jazz. How do you see both of these games going? We start with the Jazz and Clippers series first, because the Kawhi Leonard injury really changes a lot right now and puts a lot more of the pressure back on playoff beat.
Yeah, this is a tough one, man. This is a lot of pressure on Paul. We're going back to Utah. Look, it's not that Paul George isn't capable of having an epic performance. I wouldn't hold my breath for a Kevin Durant-like performance.
No.
But, look, if the Jazz are cold from 3 and the Clippers really play great defense, Reggie Jackson has an outer body of experience in a good way, and Paul plays well, they got a chance. But with Kawhi being out, I just don't like it. I don't like it tonight at all. I think the Jazz take Game 5 and they go back to LA and close it out in 6.
Sounds like I heard a lot of ifs there in terms of the Clippers versus Jazz series. Now, Hawks versus Sixers tonight for Game 5. Hawks getting that win in Game 4. Joel Embiid was the story after that. Him not looking good, 0 for 12, I believe, in the second half. Do you think the Hawks have a chance to steal one on the road here again like they did in Game 1?
Look, the one thing you never want to give a team in the playoffs is confidence, right? And a young team like the Hawks especially, I mean, Trey's already got a lot of moxie and is already feeling himself. Like, you don't got to give him any more. And now they smell blood in the water. Philly had the chance to close them out and take a commanding 3-1 lead, even with Embiid playing as hobbled as he did in that Game 4. But, down the stretch, they just could not stop the Hawks. And the Philly's a great defensive team. Joel couldn't make shots. There's a lot of empty possessions, right? We talked about that before in the Mavericks and the Bucks Nets series. Empty possessions when you're not scoring points in the playoffs, and that hurts. Especially the other team gets down and scores on the other end. It's really all about Embiid tonight, Dexter. If Embiid, is his usual self, I think Philly will be fine. But if he's not, where are they getting their offense from? Again, Tobias Harris, Seth Curry, they're fine, but Embiid is their difference maker, right? He's the one that people don't have an answer for. And Trae Young goes off, and Herter and Bogdanovich and Gallo and Capella roll into the rim. That could be trouble. And I'll tell you this, I mean, it's not sort of like groundbreaking, but if the Hawks win Game 5 and go up 3-2, not liking it for Philly.
Well, wouldn't shock me if the Hawks won Game 5 and went up 3-2, because it's been a wacky Wednesday. A lot of crazy things have happened following the great performance by Kevin Durant last night. Wacky Wednesday was a lot to talk about, a lot of hot topics. Like we told you, no hot takes here with my man Jarod.
Listen, we don't fool around with that. No hot takes on this show. Nuance. You want hot takes? Y'all know where to find that trash.
That is, even on a wacky Wednesday, we bring you the nuance.